This is Forza Motorsport 4. We're here on the Xbox 360. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here? It's 720p, 60 FPS, and it is one incredible and remarkable Forza experience. It's the racing game that really got me fully into racing games, I would say, in the modern era. Well, not so modern anymore, right? But yeah, this is a classic, really well done, well loved entry in the franchise, and it really, I think, kind of pushed the 360 to its actual, just absolute limits. It was kind of the combination of all the different Forza Motorsport titles they released over the years for the platform, and yeah, it looks fantastic with the rewind system. But no, it really did have a high level of visual fidelity in regards to the environments and the backdrops and all the geometry within the worlds, the quality of the cars. It's visually hasn't necessarily aged perfectly well, but I still think it's a very, very great looking game for its time. And it's very interesting because I've now taken a dive through, I guess you would say, all of the different Forza Motorsport games, actually, to showcase, which is really, really quite intriguing to actually sit here and present each of the differing options that were present. So I absolutely love the Bernese Alps. It is perhaps my favorite level in the franchise. There's just something really kind of majestic about it. The tall mountains, the snowy feel, the quaint village lifestyle. It's just really, really quite an interesting design and track design. And I think it just works perfectly well. It is a beautiful place. And you can fine tune the AI to be, differing levels of difficulty as you would expect. What else was interesting about this is that it did actually have Kinect support for the Xbox 360 Kinect, which was the original Kinect, the 1.0 edition, right? So yeah, this game did have a little bit of everything. And you can kind of tell that the backdrop is sort of I think it's a photo, right? It's kind of what it looks like in the back. I don't know, the way they do it is really interesting. Because it's layered, you can tell the way they kind of set up the trees and everything like that is just really, really quite fascinating. It's really giving you that feeling that you are in this real place. And there's all this geometry around you too, right? You've got the different crowds of people, the various items, the flags, and then they've got differing layers of mountain stuff to really give it that feeling of depth. It's really, really cleverly well done. I mean, yeah, I really actually wish this was more available in the modern era for comparison type things and reasons, but it's really quite neat. I am having a totally bad wipeout, which is why we have the rewind system. But there's also a nice sense of glossiness to the vehicles, and to me it is also very intriguing in the sense that you can compare this to 5, and you can definitely see that they did go for a very revamped modeling of the cars. Wow, I'm going way too aggressive here, which is fascinating. So yeah, you can definitely see that sort of upgrade for the vehicles between the generations, which is fascinating. And then obviously to even now the modern times with the further pushing of the geometry of the vehicles and whatnot, it's absolutely fascinating. Because I think at the time this was really, really quite cutting edge, obviously. I still think this actually holds up quite beautifully well, honestly. But yeah, what do we get here in terms of other stuff? So there's the career mode, kind of quick play, which is what I like doing, all the multiplayer stuff. There was a second disc that you could install if you had a certain version of the game, and that in itself came with additional content that you could kind of enjoy. So yeah, there actually was a lot of ways to actually play this. Oh, I'm seeing all the marks on the track and stuff like that. The shadow work of the trees. They really are technical wizards. They definitely were at the time. Turn 10. just delivered some absolutely like remarkable results in such interesting tight time spaces as well. So let's dive into the next race here from the Bernese Alps. But yeah, I love this level. It's so interesting. So this is another classic level, a little bit of a maple infusion there. So yeah, this game was packed with 26 tracks, 17 of them being real, and then the other 9 being filled out by fantasy levels, which, you know, makes perfect sense. Oh, look at those majestic rolling hilltops. This is actually so quaint in comparison to what we have in the latest Motorsport, which I guess you would technically call 8, but it's like the rebooted one at the time of filming this. And yeah, just absolutely fascinating, the changes in technology over the years. There are over 500 cars that are present. This was also the first one that had the Auto Vista. So that's like kind of a big setup area to like view and engage with, you know, vehicles and whatnot. And it obviously had like high level of universal acclaim, and they just put together what was a genuinely impressive, expansive racing game. This is why I think the Motorsport series, especially coming out of the 360 era, was such a top tier racing franchise. Was just like the quantity of things you got, the scope of the experience, and just how well designed everything was. It really is like visually still impressive. Like I look at this and I'm sure some will be like, oh, you know, it's an oldie, but like it is actually really, really intriguing, like from a technical standpoint, like the depth within the environment, the way the shadows are done, the geometry of the cars and the world. Very, very impressive for its era. I would say it is rather similar to its predecessor 3, but I think it does make remarkable improvements and upgrades to that experience. Wow, come on. We get better on the driving. Although I would imagine the Kinect control aspect would have been intriguing. See, I kind of wish I had a 360 Kinect set up to kind of give this one a whirl, because it would be honestly fascinating to showcase that kind of thing. Maybe someday. Maybe someday we'll revisit and do something along those lines, but yeah, it is really interesting. Maple Valley. Get all of these really, really cool areas. And then, as I was saying, just the gap between this and 5 is actually even more fascinating, kind of like going back. Because you have like a very specific way that you remember games, right? Like I remember this being absolutely just so cutting edge and visually impressive. And fun to play. I was like, wow, this is just like so fun. It was like, wow. And then I got more and more into racing games over the years, and I cover so many of the differing titles, right? And then to come back and be like, time has gone by. That is a fascinating thing, is like as generations of gaming goes on, to sit back and kind of look at certain things like this is really, really intriguing. Because you can just see how far we've kind of like pushed the technical aspects of games. And obviously, aside from just like, you know, the single player aspect of things, the multiplayer was really expansive too. A lot of people had a lot of fun doing all of the differing multiplayer modes and whatnot that you can enjoy. This track really does still feel really good. I mean, it's certainly like aged, but it seems like they did really aim to cover the visual kind of flourishing of this place with the fresh, like, I guess you would call them autumn colors, I guess you could go for. You know, it's just these trees with these vibrant color palettes, because a lot of the racetracks are, you know, a lot more concrete focused, or the trees are of a certain, you know, time of year, but this one really does seem to capture like a timeless sort of spot in racing, which is cool. And I'm loving this oldie Corvette Stingray thing. It's so funny looking at this compared to like the Stingrays we have today. It's actually like almost a little bit of a laugh. So we have another track selection here, obviously a completely different part of the world. Another cool aspect of the game to kind of go over is the fact that this had the Top Gear integration. There was actually some really cool commercials for this one too along those lines, where it's, you know, where dreams are driven in Forza, and it was a big advertising thing, and I think it really actually helped push this game even further in regards to basically getting a deeper level of audience engaging with this one. Honestly, I think I have the difficulty set way too easily because I am just absolutely smoking these individuals. I would assume that's because of all the, you know, great knowledge I've gained over the years in driving and but you can set up things and really fine-tune your difficulty scenario and actually really tweak, you know, how guided you are, how easygoing it is, how free-going it is. This was really a further push, I believe, upon the past Forza titles to kind of get more into the levels of like accessibility, and then that's only grown and whatnot over the years. I had to say, I know they're not going for super realistic necessarily, like reflections and stuff on the cars, but it is a really nice touch having that little layering of kind of reflectivity on the back of the vehicle. As I said, I don't think it's like necessarily supernatural or actually realistic, but it just adds and conveys a really nice sense of you being in a place, and it kind of makes that car feel more realistic, even if the trees and whatnot and the backdrops aren't fully hitting levels of realism. Like, it's almost quaint, this one, in comparison to the realistic standards of the modern era, which is funny because I'm sure we'll be saying that again down the road once we get an even later entry in the Forza series. Because if there's one thing that's certain, I'm sure that eventually we will see, you know, additional entries in this franchise over time. Because there is more technology to improve and develop over the years. What a quaint track this is, very mountain-esque. See, the cool thing about an earlier era of Forza was, like, not just having real places, but also kind of delving into the fantasy stuff, and I do ponder if we'll see that again. Because it does seem like it is much more about, like, actually capturing physical locations, which is a bit of a shame since some of the fantasy ones are ever so fun to play and race upon. It would be really cool if we could get like a track like building system in Forza someday. I think would be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It would be very intriguing to see where that would go. At least from like a modding perspective, that would be fascinating. But I do think these ones are about, you know, on the tracks, doing the racing, and then on top of that, you know, it's kind of like a little bit lax, the rules in regards to, you know, kind of doing some of the advantages and twists and turns. Although I do think these tracks are a lot more guided than later on. I mean, some of the more professional circuits, I think, are not really going to let you run out of the lines too much, but maybe a little bit in this one, and then later on it's more about actually fine-tuned levels of racing things. I just love the sense of cool, like, water flowing by and rivers, and you feel like you're in, like, really tranquil, cool locations racing along. And this is a long, windy circuit of basically almost drift equivalent corner taking. Like, this is actually just wild how much this winds, but we're basically like climbing a mountain. So that makes a lot of sense. Could you imagine actually racing along a place like this in real life? I think it would be terrifying. Even with that rail, you're going fast enough with your car, momentum-wise, you just kind of go right over it. More of a safety rail, just so you don't like bump off and go into a big lake area. We have areas like this in Canada, where you get to the top of the mountain, there's these huge bodies of water. It's utterly fascinating. Actually, be really cool to see a Canadian mountain-esque racing track included in one of these. That would be very, very neat for sure, actually. Yeah, I love what they got going on here. It's sort of a really nice flashback for me, if that makes sense. It really takes me back to a simpler racing time. But there's so much content here. You can spend a lot of time racing and playing this because there's, what do we see, 26 tracks? That's a lot. Okay, I messed up because I just saw that little thing pop up and give me, like, perfect performance for what I'm doing. Thanks, game. Saying I'm doing all these nice turns and then I bump into something. That in itself is kind of funny. But yeah, I think we're kind of pressing over here at the peak top of this place. The sense of scale is just wondrous. It must be hard to convey that kind of thing. Where it's sort of, oh, you are super elevated. But also not being a, like, regular scanned world area. What an interesting development. Yeah, I also ponder... I mean, I'm assuming that's what those areas there. But I'm wondering if these are just, like, random pictures of, you know, different areas that aren't even actually that particular place, if that makes sense. For the backdrops. I mean, obviously, the Bernese Alps is, you know... There are fictionalized settings within this. I just wonder where they get the pictures from. They're just, like, going out to a mountain range. Ah, this looks cool. Just snapping it and throw it in there. Because obviously that is a picture to the left. How do they do that so well, where it kind of blends these, like, photos? I guess that's why they call it photorealistic. Ah, but they blend these photos with these actual developed tracks, and the track, like, the actual pavement looks pretty good. So do the signs. What an impressive Forza title. There's a reason I loved this one so much and fell in love with this franchise to this degree. It was so good. They just for a long time kept getting more and more and more impressive. Uh-oh. Don't worry, I'm so ahead of the competition in this one, it's not even a big deal. My favorite thing is just, like, the grass and, like, some of the, like, trees and stuff are floating a little bit. And it's just, it's side things that you drive by, so you don't usually think about it too much. It stands out a bit more now that time has gone by, but I also love the vehicle damage is really, really quite well done. It's not as cosmetic as it feels like it gets in some of the later ones. Okay, is now the time to be doing these cool drift moves on the top of a mountain at this time of day while I'm being chased by others? What an impressive track. This is so cool. I am blown away by this game. It took a while to get everything downloaded and updated, but well worth the time to revisit this one, because this is a gem of racing. I think it should always be remembered as, like, a pretty important benchmark for the technology of this genre. Very, very fun to play. Especially for, like, circuit-based, too. Circuit-based doesn't always perfectly hit the mark for me, but, yeah, because you were finally starting to see the competition of open-world racing games a bit more, too, at this time. From within the series as well, with Horizon, right? So the goal to push the boundaries would have been even higher than it was prior, because now you've got competition from within your own brand, too. This is a very, very long race. I think we're almost at the end of it, though. We're getting there. We'll reach the end soon. Probably just as time hits the right mark, I would say. The bridges look really good, too. This whole thing is very genuinely impressive. I've been praising it the whole time, but you do have to think of the time this came out and just kind of compare it arrow-wise. It's almost a remarkable effort, honestly. Super remarkable. Hilariously, we have just a little bit more to show. But yeah, quick play does take a bit of time if you want to adjust vehicles and whatnot, which is funny.